Hello everyone, and welcome to yet another segment of Im Tirtzu Zionist Salon. I am Doug Altabef, the chairman of the Board of Im Tirtzu, and I'm really excited today to have with me someone who is leading a very important effort in this country, in Israel. It's not necessarily an effort that is always garnering a lot of headlines or a lot of press, but trust me, it is having a profound impact on the future of Israel. And I'm referring, of course, to the Tikva Fund and its executive director, Amiad Cohen. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Tikva has been undertaking something that until not that long ago was not seen from the conservative side of the either the intellectual or the political spectrum, and that is engagement in the debate about ideas. I was at a dinner not that long ago this was pre his prime ministership. Naftali Bennett got up in front of a group of Zionist organizations and he said, you know, it wasn't that long ago that the right had abdicated the debate about ideas. The right was interested in this building, that settlement, these facts on the ground, and the left was left all on its own to talk about ideas. Happily, that is no longer the case. Thanks to the leadership of Tikva, new generations of very bright young Israelis are being trained in the most important wisdom of Western civilization, of Israeli history, of Jewish wisdom, a compendium of very fundamental, basic, and critically important stuff that will help the future leadership of this country to make decisions that are grounded in perspectives that we have not always necessarily had the opportunity to avail ourselves of. So welcome, Amiad, and I want to start by, we were talking just before we started this. I've been involved with Tikva for many years, both in New York before we made Aliyah and since, and I've been consistently impressed with the content, with the presentations, with the output, but I didn't really know all of the history of the organization. It's a fascinating history. So as they say, maybe you can give us the elevator pitch of what Tikva started as and what it continues to be in terms of its mission.
So first of all, thank you for having me. And we owe Tikva to two people. The first one is obviously Zalman Bernstein, Samuel Bernstein, that he invested the money to start Tikva. And the second one who came with the idea and convinced Mr. Bernstein is Yoram Chazoni, Dr. Yoram Chazoni. That Yoram Chazoni, everyone I believe knows the name and knows him and read part of his books, his unbelievable books. He understood one thing that the conservative people in Israel, that there was a handful of them, and the right in Israel did not understand the importance of ideas and giving some kind, expanding the notion of what is the political debate in Israel. It used to be, till 2010, the political debate in Israel was settlements, Judean Samaria, national security, and religion and state. And all the debates, all the conversations were around that topic, and we need to understand why. Because the important knowledge, the common knowledge of people who woke up in the morning, they thought about the existence of the state of Israel. That was the question. Will the state of Israel survive or not? Thank God in 2007, 10, 15, we live in a different world. We're not questioning the essence, the existence of the state of Israel. Yoram Chazoni, he saw that in 1992 that we will get there. And he saw how the left, progressive, Marxists, forget about the specific name, understood that. And they hold all the posts of the intellectual ideas and the education and, let's say, the building of the future leadership of the state of Israel through the institutions, the political institutions, the academic institutions, And every alum in Israel went through reading either the Marxist ideas, the progressive ideas, and was educated with a very, very small spectrum of ideas. Not because they were bad people, because the State of Israel was established as a socialist communist state, very influenced from universities in Europe and the States that became progressive in that era, talking about the 60s. So that's the establishment in Israel. And there was no competition. And Yoel Chazoni, coming from Princeton, understood that and convinced Mr. Bernstein to invest money in starting to have even the classic textbooks to introduce an alternative to these ideas. So Shalem, Tikva, started the center, a think tank called Shalem Think Tank, Merkaz Shalem, Shalem Center, and started to translate books that were never in Hebrew. Hayek and Edmund Burke and Tocqueville and the classic political science books that were never in Hebrew. By the way, till today, we don't have Adam Smith in full length in Hebrew. Now think about a university in a world of ideas that lack the spectrum of ideas. What's the debate? Now, it's important to emphasize that the language barrier is unbelievable. Israelis, even if they read English, they don't understand. I think I speak some English, but it's hard for me to read English. It takes 3 times to read a book than in Hebrew. So the language barrier actually narrows the ability to access these ideas. So what Shalem did in the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, translated 50 books to introduce to the public these ideas. They started another thing called Azure, Tchelet, the journal, that articulated some of the high-level fundamental ideas of conservatism, translated from articles from the English literature that we have and written some original articles. I'm 40 today, so in the beginning of the 90s, the middle of the 90s, I was 15, 20, and my father was subscribed to Shalem, and he had some of the books, so I read them as a young adult, the beginning of the 2000s when I was after the army, during the army a little bit, and I was introduced to these ideas, and I'm not the only one. There were around 1,000 people subscribed to Azure, another 5,000, 10,000 people reading some of the books, but it wasn't coherent enough. A couple of changes inside Tikva during the 2000s. Strategically, they decided to shift in Shalem towards starting a college. And Shalem became Shalem College, as everyone knows today, a liberal arts college in Israel, that Russ Roberts today is the chairman of it, the president of it, sorry. And it educates students in classic liberal arts, very important in Israel, very important institution. But the main goal that Tikva had to start and initiate elite leadership of conservative leaders with having the conservative ideas did not fill up with Shalem College. Shalem, remember, the Israeli academia is regulated by the government. It's very hard to have a real free world of ideas with a regulated college. Now, remember that Mr. Bernstein passed away in 1999, and he asked Roger Hertog to take over and lead Tikva, and it took a couple of years, almost a decade, for this transition from Shalem to Shalem College, and Roger hiring Mr. Amiad Cohen, the general director of Tikva internationally and in the States today, hired him, and they started an effort in the States that you today know as Bible 365 and Mosaic Magazine and JRB and a variety of seminars for students and college students and everything. Unbelievable what they're doing in the States. But in parallel, they understood that the core agenda, the core mission of Tikva is to start a conservative movement in Israel. So they started in 2011-12, some student seminars here in Israel, hiring a couple of people that they were introduced, Ran Baratz, we know, and others. And in parallel, they took some Israelis that they knew, part of a young group that consumed these books, that read Hayek and Burke and all the Shalem books and Azure until 2012 it was published, and took them to the States for 2 weeks or a week of seminars with the elite American intellectuals, conservative intellectuals, like Yuval Levin, like Chris Demuth, Amiad Cohen and others sitting in a room and learning the conservative ideas. And I was one of them. In 2014, I got a phone call from a friend. There's a nice organization called Tikva. They're giving a stipend to come to the States. Said, well, great, stipend, New York, my second time in New York. And a great experience in learning. And then what they did there is two things. First of all, they framed. When you read books, like it's a lot of dots. But when you sit in a room and you frame it as conservative ideas, that started a lot of people to name these ideas. The second thing, they looked for the leadership of what we call today Tikva Israel. And that's actually the employees we have today. In 2015, I started working with Tikva. Starting in 2016, Hashilach magazine that followed up on Azure, on Tchelet. More public policy, more concrete articles. I didn't plan it, but I found this here. This is a Shilach magazine. This is how it looks like. We're in the 32nd issue with you, the editor. And
I have every issue of Azure, by the way, in my bookshelf in Rosh Pina.
In English.
In English, yes. I kept them. They made Aliyah with us. I said, these are precious.
I agree.
Publications.
I have a nice picture in my office that it's filmed from 1902. And it has a nice picture of Klonimus Vysotsky, like the Zalman Bernstein of Echad Ha'am, that we all know Echad Ha'am. And the picture of Echad Ha'am and plenty of streets in Tel Aviv. Bialik and Revnitsky and David Yelin, a lot of our forefathers, intellectual forefathers, that wrote in a journal called Hashilach. And there are a lot of white men, 35-year-old, that they articulated the cultural and public policy world of ideas in 1902. They started in the late 19th century, but they already summed up in 1902, like, this is how we succeed. I have dozens of these issues, original issues of Hashilach, and we named our journal following them, looking back at them. And I think history today recognizes them. I'm sure that history will recognize Tchelet and Azure as a game changer in the future of the state of Israel.
So what you're saying is fascinating in the sense that, look, I'm a graduate of Columbia College, and Columbia was famous for having a core curriculum where every student, you could be pre-med, pre-business, whatever, but every student had to study what was called contemporary civilization and humanities. So that was a core study of the great books of Western Civ, Locke, Hume, Descartes, Hobbes, and we can fill in all the names, and then the dead white men who wrote all the Greek tragedies and Dante and Shakespeare, and there was an assumption that to call yourself an educated person, you had to be rooted in this wisdom, in this background. And that was not necessarily unique to Columbia, although they were on steroids about it. Princeton had it to some extent, Harvard had it to some extent, other smaller colleges as well, St. John's in Maryland. And yet today I wonder that that's probably morphed into something that has become the victim of identity politics. And so
in Israel, I think it's first of all mediocrity. Here in Israel. Here in Israel. First of all, the university experience in Israel is very different than the American one. It's very utilitarian. You come to school, do what you need to do, and you leave. There's no college campus.
Correct. It's all pre-professional. It's all vocational, so to speak. Even if it's very high-level stuff, it's not intended to provide a campus experience per se. Students here are older. They're post-army. Many of them are already married.
Married with kids.
That was completely unheard of and is still unheard of, where you have in the U.S. it's 18-year-old kids going, they're getting away from home, they're on their own for the first time, very different gestalt socially. But what I'm also getting at is what you're talking about here, what you're talking about here is unique, and I suspect even what Tikva is doing in America is increasingly unique, because that emphasis on that kind of great book education is probably no longer really prevalent.
So yes, I think it is unique, going back to the, let's say, classic books and ideas. We have it in the religious world, obviously. We both read Rambam, we know Gemara, in the Jewish religious world we have it. But yes, in the intellectual Western world of ideas, I think, as you said, identity politics made a decline in the States. In Israel, we never had it in like the original sense that we have. But I don't think everyone has to read the books. But I think if you want to be a leader in Israel, you have to have a core library in your head of ideas. And the emphasis in Tikva is, first of all, ideas matter. And that, like Roger used to tell me that again and again. It's the policies, your decision making, the moral ones, the public policy ones. Every decision you make are an outcome of how you conceive the world. Mm-hmm. And the glasses the lens you put on your eyes when you look at the world are an outcome of the ideas. Mm-hmm. Of the imagination. It's from the prose books that you read, and the ideas of how you conceive the moral agenda, either Bentham or Kant or the Jewish literature. And you can't be a real leader, I think, a real person, but put aside that, definitely not a political national leader, definitely not in the state of Israel, the challenges we have, without having a very, very deep knowledge of history, of the classic books, and the outcomes of it. And unfortunately, we don't have plenty of them. And the emphasis on that, yes, it's unique in Israel. Yes. In Tikva.
Yes. I had the opportunity to interview Michael Oren a couple of weeks ago. And Michael, of course, is a Salon alum. Mm-hmm. And he made the point that one reason, and maybe the reason why Bibi asked him to become ambassador to the United States was because he had read Michael's books. And he said, I need a historian who has that frame of reference, who has that depth of understanding, who has that perspective to be in this role. You can't just be, someone who knows how to turn a phrase or shake hands with people. You have to have that perspective, and that's really what you're getting at. And I think it's absolutely essential. And as you said, Israel, thankfully, is evolving. The days of imminent tenuousness or imminent existential vulnerability, thankfully, are gone. And we now can go from, will there be an Israel, to what kind of an Israel will there be? How great can Israel be?
Exactly.
And in that quest, the idea of arming ourselves, as it were, intellectually, becomes very, very important, very significant. So let's talk about what Tikva in Israel is doing to do exactly that.
So everything in Tikva goes to two paths. There's ideas and there's people. People create ideas, ideas influence people to create more ideas, but you have to work on both of them. So we always have a student department and we have the ideas department. The ideas, as I said, we have a Shiloh magazine, just to give you a sense. The first 2 issues of a Shiloh, we wrote the articles. Other people signed them. Some kind of that. It was very close to that. Mm. Because we didn't have a cadre of people who can write long-form articles articulating conservative public policy ideas in Hebrew. Today, we have a waiting list of plenty, dozens of people to write articles. Understanding the importance of enabling people and incentivizing them to write, to think. So that was a strategy for the magazine. So we have people writing, we have the ideas themselves articulated. We have over 150 articles, long-form articles in Hebrew that explain the challenges and positive alternatives. We emphasize on not attacking the problems, but only explaining them and mostly offering a positive alternative. What are we offering? It's very important for us to articulate that. So the articles, it's at 5 to 10,000 words in Hebrew, very deep, very build right. We have a very good editorial staff, and we have today, if you have a question about what do conservatives think about X, you can find an article, at least one on most of the topics today. We're looking always to we're now in issue 32, we're looking to issue 300. So we're spread out to like thinking about the amount of challenges we have. We will repeat some of them, we will update some of them, but we're addressing topic by topic, from governance to policing to national security, to the legal world, to economics, to abstract ideas a little bit more. But we're trying to address all of the topics, so create a person who writes them, we create the ideas, and obviously to have a readership. Just to give you a sense of the numbers, and again, as a Gamad al Hakim, I can say that in English, that phrase in English, like a small guy on the shoulders of a giant.
Standing on the shoulders of giants. Yeah.
So, Azure had approximately 1,000 subscribers top here in Israel. We have 4,500 paying subscribers in Israel. If you do the math in America, it's like 150,000 subscribers in the States, and we have tens of thousands every month consuming these things on the website. The demand in Israel is unbelievable, and that's the fun part here. And we know that we're quoted in Supreme Court decisions, to universities, quoted in seminars, in theses, in PhD. They quote from a Shirach, so it's a real base of influence with these ideas.
Realistically, you are basically training the intellectual Sayeret Matkal of Israel. You're taking people that you want to turn into elite intellectual commandos.
So that's the second branch of ideas, of people, yes. We have it's called our Gaman Institute. Our Gaman Institute is basically a university. We have 120 students coming, each a bachelor degree and master degree, that in parallel to their studying in universities, they come to get supplementary education in Tikva. We have Exodus, for bachelor degree, that they come and be introduced to the conservative ideas in national security, economics, and all the field that we represent. And by the way, we just started yesterday the 8th year of Exodus, and I have a perspective to see the difference between these two groups. And 7-8 years ago, we tried to convince them that there's something called conservatism. And when in application forms, when you ask them who's the thinker that you admire, it was like Karl Marx and like things like that. And today, it's a total different game. They're highly knowledgeable, at least, if not educated, about conservative ideas. So you can see the difference we made in the past 7-8 years. So we have Exodus, and then in the master degree or PhD students, we have tracks more professionalized. So we have the public policy track called Adam Smith program. We have national security called Churchill. We have the high-level academic political science called Herzl. And we're planning to open 2 more tracks for political leadership called Jabotinsky and for legal leadership called Scalia. So these are the education. We have fellows, and that's, yes, and the people that are applying, we have approximately between 1 to 5 to 1 to 10 people that accepted out of the applied high-level people and a very hard application process. We're looking for, first of all, knowledge, talent, enthusiasm, and character. People who are potentially leaders, not only political, but people who will take responsibility for the future of the state of Israel. And we can see that if we find the right people and give them the right knowledge, they can make a significant difference, and they can see it happening already. We have Tikva has in Israel about 1,000 alums, over 1,000 alums that attended in these seminars, annual ones. We used to have them in summer. Today it's like a full year. That either you come to bachelor degrees half a day and the advanced study degrees are a full day. They read 100 pages every session. It's crazy how much they read, and all of them are shocked that they never saw this curriculum in universities. None of it.
I would suggest that the real value of this is not just training potential or future political leaders, but it's training leaders. Could be in finance, could be in the arts, could be in manufacturing. You're a great example. I mean, you have a background in business.
Yeah.
You have a background in municipal administration, all right? And you found your way into, a very serious think tank. You're not a professional academic.
No, definitely not.
So, which is wonderful. I mean, that to me is exactly what the potential of Tikva is all about. That I went to school, and theoretically I have a law degree. I practiced law for a week and a half, but I've been in business my whole career. But it doesn't mean that I don't focus on these things. It doesn't mean that I don't take them seriously. Of course I take them seriously, and very possibly it helped me, as it helped Zalman Bernstein, as it's helped Roger Hertog, who were in the same field that I was in, although wildly more successful. But, you bring to bear this kind of intellectual awareness, this depth, into any realm, and it has the ability to inform, it has the ability to deepen, and just make us better citizens, better leaders, better, a smarter country, a more aware country. So it's very, very important. Are there organizations in Israel that you interface with, or you see yourselves as doing your own thing?
So we work together. First of all, most of the NGOs in Israel, the activist NGOs, a lot of them are alums of Tikva. The leaders there are alums of Tikva. We are, because in the NGO world you can either be academic, educational, or activist.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying not to be activist as it's a strategic discipline.
Mm-hmm.
We are not addressing current affairs.
Right.
We're running a marathon.
Right.
And to be disciplined about the strategy, I have to disconnect myself from, it's hard, believe me, it's hard, from current affairs. I don't Tikva myself, obviously I'm involved personally, but as Tikva, we're not involved in anything that is relevant to today.
Mm-hmm.
We're investing in the future. And we were doing that for almost a decade, following even 3 decades since Yoram and Zalman. And I'm looking forward for 1-2 more decades forward. And first of all, I can see what's happened, what it built me. I can see the books and the seminars that I attended in, what they did to me. And I can see what they're doing to our students. And the vector is obvious that someone has to invest in that. It's very important that the other NGOs do their work today and working on the battles of today.
Yes.
But we're like an R&D center.
Yes. It's critical that you stick to your knitting and that you don't have mission creep, as it were. And as someone intimately involved with an activist NGO, I very much appreciate our relationships and our friendships with NGOs that are not that way, that we derive a lot of benefit from them, and our strong preference is they stay doing what they do, we do what we do, and we operate in effect in parallel, but on different planes of interaction, different planes of engagement.
Yes. I'll give you an example for some collaboration we're doing now. So we have the Shibolet publication house.
Yes.
You can see here
Right.
Douglas Murray and Thomas Sowell, you can see Paul Johnson and
Yep.
James Burnham, all these books we published. James Q. Wilson.
By the way, these were not just put here because of our...
Yes, it's fun to see this. It's fun. And we publish books. And the head of Im Tirtzu now, Matan Pelek, published a book.
Yes.
And we have a subscription model. Just to give you a sense, we sold in the past 4 years over 200,000 books in Israel. And to give you a sense of the numbers, a non-fiction book that sells more than 3,000 copies is in the top 20% of the market. 4,000 copies is in the top 5% of the market. So we published 35 different books and selling over 200,000 books. I think it's successful in penetrating the world of ideas. By the way, as a businessman, that was a strategy, because when the market goes one way, always go the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone says go to Twitter, go to new media, go to there. Great. We're printing books, we're printing magazines, and the demand is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the proof for that, that's the fun part of it, is that ex-Prime Minister Netanyahu reached out to us to publish his book.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're publishing his book. He respects, by the way, the real reason for that is we published Paul Johnson's book, The History of the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, in a publication that understands the importance of
Mm-hmm.
ideas,
Mm-hmm.
I want to be part of that.
Right.
And we never met him before, we're not involved in these things, but it's an intellectual deep book that I highly recommend to read and definitely buy in Hebrew. I don't care about Simon & Schuster. But they're publishing his book in English. But now with this publication, we have the subscription model. We're giving out to our subscribers Matan Peleg's book.
Yes.
In 3,000 copies to our 3,000 subscribers. So these collaborations, when you have the opportunity to, this echo chamber definitely helps a lot. I can see it in a variety of things that we're doing. I think the best one is the legal world.
Right.
If there's...
Excuse me 1 second. Matan would kill me if I didn't say this. His book is called, in English, A State for Sale, and it's all about the extensive foreign government underwriting of anti-Zionist organizations here, and it is it's a portrayal of a very, on both sides of the mouth, rather toxic relationship of European governmental funding and Israeli NGOs. So you were great to pick. It's garnered a lot of attention. It's a very hot topic, and he was beyond excited that you were doing that with your subscribers. So thank you for that.
We're doing that as a favor. We think it's important.
No, of course.
It's you take the best to do the best. But another organization we're trying to work with is there's a real battle today in the legal world, and that's a battle that, let's say, everyone understands that today. You can have Twitter debates on constitutional law in Israel that we never had 10 years ago, definitely not 5 years ago. We never had these things. Now, people are highly knowledgeable about constitutional questions and legal questions. We need to thank the Supreme Court, we need to thank the Bibi trial, we need to thank a lot of things that are happening, but it's an opportunity to address these topics. So 2 years ago, understanding the importance and the relevance of the legal challenge that we have, that is basically in Israel, if people know the details, it's basically an aristocrats running the country. It's some kind of monarchy even. They have full control on what's happening in Israel. And it's a very complicated idea, but the real problem we have is law schools in Israel educate them in the same path. So every lawyer in Israel, you learn one thing. That's it. Like there's one way to think about the law in Israel. So 2.5, a little bit before COVID, I went to the States and met a very important person called Leonard Leo. That he started the American organization called the Federalist Society. And working with activist legal organizations in Israel, we built up the Israeli Federal Society called the Israeli Forum for Law and Liberty. And we have chapters in universities. It's a separate department because of the importance of the legal world in Israel. So it's not an activist department, but it relates and works with a lot of activist groups in the legal world. And its core agenda is to offer the intellectual background. So by accident again, we didn't plan this, but this book here is the first time Antonin Scalia is writing in Hebrew. Now think about a law school that doesn't have any literature to offer textualist or originalist perspective on the law. In Israel, it's everything the interpretation of the judge or the legal advisor. There's no text to offer that. And today, that department in Tikva is offering the young students with a seminar, with a lot of literature and running around, and they're more close to the activists with activist organizations like Etnoa Mishilut and Kohelet and other activist organizations working together to build, because the real problem, we don't have the manpower to fight these battles. So you have to very quickly educate them, offer them alternatives so the battle can continue, because the amount of things we're losing in the meantime, the price is very high. So that's a place where, again, working together with organizations.
Very good. So my last question for you is about regular people. I've been to 2 fascinating conferences that Tikva sponsored, conservatism conferences and was just recently at the conference with Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro, where there were 3,000 people. If they had 5,000 seats, there would have been 5,000 people. But in looking around at the audience at all of those events, I saw a very nice cross-section of people, regular people. And so my question is, what is there, besides these type of events, what is there for the rest of us, the regular folks, that we might be able to benefit from, participate in, vis-a-vis Tikva?
So, first of all, we're offering, I'm a supply-side economist. I mean, I believe if we offer the right product, people will consume it and buy it. But it takes time to build the market. You need to educate the market and offer them, and we need to fine-tune ourselves, obviously. But it takes time to build a market. We started with the elite people, obviously, but the goal is definitely to reach out to everyone. So 200,000 books are a lot of people reading the books, and they're spreading out with very young people. That's one thing. Actually, the conferences are the next stage. When Roger in 2019 forced me to start a conference, and I said, listen, we're not prepared yet, we don't have it. He said, listen, I don't care, make a conference, what's your target? I said, 300 people. He said, great. Have a conservative conference for 300 people.
We had 2.5 times that.
We had almost 900 people attending that conference. It was unbelievable, and it shocked me the amount of people were asking. This year, we had 1,200 people coming to the conference. Again, in a higher price, it's a full day conference, and people, you can see their eyes lighten with the experience and the intellectual content. And 3 months later, we had Ben Shapiro for the first time in Tel Aviv. 2,500 people. In 2 weeks, we sold all the tickets. 2 months later, Peterson and Ben Shapiro together in Jerusalem. If I had a venue for 10,000 people, I would fill that up. So that's the experience. Now, as a conservative, I'm empiricist, and I understand I'm not enlightened, and I understand that the human being is much more complicated than only his intellect. He needs the experience. People need the feeling that they're not alone. People need to feel the nice show, that we're part of something big and influential, and I hope, you can testify much better than I can, but the experience in the conferences gave people the feeling they want to be part of something big, part of a movement. And I still remember my meeting at Roger's office, Roger Hertog's office, the chairman of Tikva, before now it's Elliot Abrams. In 2017, when I started actually running Tikva, and he asked me, what's your goal? I gave him a strategic plan, 5-year plan. I said, but plans are nice words, and as Roger knows how to do, like to dig down with questions, what is the success? How do you measure success? And I said, I'm trying to do a movement. He said, I don't understand what a movement is. What are you choosing? I said, listen, I want a conference of 2,000 people. He said, okay, I got it. Oh, we got there. And I'm shocked.
Right.
And I believe that the future, we have already podcasts in Hebrew, and we're starting our podcasts in English, and this is new, we're starting it, podcasts in Arabic. The Israeli population is not only Israelis and Jews, we have a very strong Arab population that we need to offer them. There's no one Israeli reaching out to Israeli Arabs. Someone needs to have a conversation with them. So we started it a year ago with some programs we're doing behind the scenes, and now we're starting to reach out. Listen, this is the world of ideas. We're thinking about the constitutional structure of Israel. Do you think the solution for the Arab challenge in Israel is having a strong local government? In Israel, we don't have local governments. It's like it's a big story, but they're working for the central government. If you read Tocqueville, if you read constitutional thought, you understand the importance of local government. Let's offer the Arabs that. Take full responsibility and authority for your own life, for your civil life. We can offer a lot of things that the, let's say, neo-Marxists in Israel, they don't even know they're neo-Marxists, I think, but they think in a centralized structure, in a Keynesian economic structure. They don't believe in the responsibility and authority for people with their own life. They don't believe in liberty. And I think we have a lot to offer to a variety of populations in Israel. And yes, we're trying to expand to reach out to much more people. And as I said, the growth rate we're still here. We can get much more.
Okay, so then you earned a bonus question. That really will be the last question. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Apropos of all of this.
5 years, I'm still on Tikva.
What?
5 years from now, I'm still on Tikva.
Yes, but where do you want Tikva to be?
Oh, Tikva to be? Oh, okay. So Tikva, when you run a marathon, my brother runs marathons, and he shows me his pace in running marathons. It's accurate as like rocket science. 4.3 minutes per kilometer.
Mm-hmm.
Every kilometer for 42, and only at the end, like, takes a little bit boost.
Mm-hmm.
If I have what I have today in Tikva, Hashilach magazine, continue to issue 300, 10 books of Shiboret every year. Instead of 100 students, I want 250 students. That's my challenge. That's what I'm looking for. We have a Haredi department we've not discussed about. Right. I want to stay exactly where I am today, continuing to drill down with the right pace. If you have the right pace, you will win. We're not sprinting anywhere. And we will have confidence of 2, 5, 10, 20,000 people. That will be a success.
So you're basically saying what you're doing is what you want to continue to doing, but you want to do it, more intensely, and more impactfully, and better, right?
I read Parkinson's Laws, and as a businessman, I'm always thinking about when the organization is starting to be the agenda itself, and not what we're trying to succeed.
Right.
I'm trying to be, hopefully successful, in being very disciplined.
Yes.
But this is my goal, this is what we're trying to achieve, to educate leadership. If it's not high quality, if it's not the best of the best, if it's not important, we don't spend a shekel on it.
Yeah. Very good. Terrific. Fascinating.